begin?
I briefly considered.
Okay, great. Thank you. So when you get ready to speak, please come forward. I'll read your name. Please come forward and let us know your name, your ward if you know it, and where you live, whether that's the city of Eugene or somewhere else. What I'll do is I'll read a name for the person who's coming up, and I'll read another name, and that's the next person, just so that you can be ready to speak after that. Please hold your applause. We ask that everybody hold applause or that kind of thing, just so that everyone in the room has a chance to speak and be heard. When you come up, you'll see a sort of a light here, and that you have 3 minutes to speak. And so the lights are on a timer, so the blinking yellow light means you have 30 seconds remaining, and a sound indicates that that's the end of your 3-minute speaking period. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And we're going to have Deb Jones first, followed by James Tapp.
Ready? Hi, I'm Deb Jones. I'm in Ward number 1. And I moved to Eugene 4 years ago and landed in the friendly neighborhood. I first learned about our neighborhood association by the quarterly newspaper that comes in the mail. I started going to our meetings. I joined the board a year later, and shortly after that I became our representative to the Neighborhood Leaders Council. I've been the co-chair of that group for the last 2 years. So I'm here tonight to ask you all to reinstate the $55,000 in funding that was cut from our budget this year that went toward neighborhood outreach communication funds as well as matching grants. So as an NLC co-chair, I do get to see a broad brushstroke of city neighborhood issues and all their diversity, and it is quite fascinating to me how they vary going east to west and north to south across the city. We all deal with some very different things. We all have our hot buttons and hot topics that bring people out to meetings. But when you drill down through all that, what the common issue is and the common challenge we all face is how to communicate with all of our neighbors, how to get the word out, how to let people know what's going on with city projects or with community organizations operating in our backyards. And that's how this universal challenge makes the city outreach funding so essential for our work. Last year, the NLC did form a communications committee to look at ways of working smarter with less funding available. And we have every intention of making better use of social media and all the new online tools that are out there. We're researching ways to have a more cohesive web presence, as well as we share our success and not failures with social media. And we hope to be able to find some printing efficiencies this year. Looking for a lot of different things. But electronic communication is not going to replace the effectiveness of mailed materials that everybody gets, or won't replace that anytime soon. That mailings go to everybody, every street address, and that's its advantage. In Friendly Neighborhood, for example, we mail to 3,500 street addresses. Our email list, after 4 years of working on it, we have about 300 email addresses, and our Facebook page for our association has 180 likes so far. So no real comparison there. Matching grants are another very low-cost way to get a lot of bang for buck and involve new people in our neighborhoods, attract new people. They're attracted to a very tangible project and improvement going on in their backyards. And so through matching grants and Friendly, for example, we have been able to have working relationships and involve new people from the Adams Elementary School, from the Astronomy Club, from daycare centers, and also from neighbors of city parks in our neighborhood. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to have James Tapp, followed by Josephine Tapp.
Hello, my name is James Tapp, T-A-P-P, and my topic is going to be on the proposed HACSA sponsors apartment dwelling that will house approximately 50 to 60 ex-convicts who have a history of many violent crimes in the surrounding neighborhood. that includes parents, children, the elderly, and school and public parks. Also, what needs to be considered is the zoning of such a project can violate many safety and securities of the neighborhood. It is crucial for someone to step up and make a close examination of the many hardships HACSA sponsors will bring to a neighborhood that is well established and loved by the community. By funding such a project, not only will significantly damage the community, but will cost many funding expenses that can be used for a much more worthy cause. I'm not certain of the process of such funding, but by funding such a project that has so many drawbacks, the neighbors warrant an investigation of what HCSA sponsors can actually do. I think what they're doing is they're not really focused on what they're doing to the neighborhood. They have plans and they got their own projects going, and someone needs to see the reality of it all, and someone needs to step up to the plate and go forward with this and put their words into effect that will hopefully will assure a safe neighborhood for the community. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Josephine Tapp, followed by David Mason.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And I resound what my husband just said, and we just want to let you know that this public project has met with a lot of public opposition, and I have signatures here of 487 people,
Happy to take those. Thank you.
and I do have copies of those. So we would like to ask you, the City of Eugene Budget Committee, to look at the budget and make sure no city money is spent on this project that could hurt our vulnerable neighborhood. We also have a positive vision for what could be done with the project site to actually help our low-income neighborhood. This is the kind of thing we would like you to prioritize in the city budget. The Housing and Community Services Agency, known as HACSA, has proposed a housing complex at 14th and Acorn Park to offer permanent housing to the 54 to 60 ex-cons and ex offenders who have graduated the sponsor's transition program. This project would also include offices for 2 full-time parole officers, whose normal caseload would result in an additional 100 parolees coming to the neighborhood regularly. According to what sponsors have told the community, occupants would have histories which would include sexual offenses, robbery, drug dealing, and other drug-related crime, homicide, and murder. They have said that there will definitely be sex offenders, just not sexual predators. Will the parolees coming through include sexual predators? We do not know yet. This is a neighborhood filled with children. Aside from the many schools, the proposed site is bordered on the west by a children's playground, 2 other playgrounds in apartment complexes, and on the east by a children's gym. Imagine 6 offenders walking daily by the picture windows where children are engaged in gymnastics, or sitting in the park bench staring at children in the playground. Imagine ex-drug dealers observing the patterns of young people traversing the park or strolling along the bike path. In California, siting this project next to the playground would be illegal. So already there are 10 apartment and condominium complexes already crowding the Oak Patch road on both sides of the street, stretching from the bike path, winding to what would be the 12th and 13th Avenues to West 18th Avenue. There are 5 schools in the vicinity: McCormick Elementary School, Kennedy Middle School, the Friends Immersion School, Churchill High School, the Quaker School, the National Academy for Artistic Gymnastics, several daycare centers, and Acorn Park itself with its own playground. Dense neighborhoods foster criminality. So adding the 60, anyway, is that the 2.5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's your 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
Sorry, thank you, though.
Thank you.
David Mason is next, followed by Joshua Gillick.
To begin with, I'd like to thank you for the work that you're doing. It's the most arduous task, and I respect the responsibility you've accepted. In appreciation for the work that I have been encouraged to do, I want to present my plea because I am one of the more than 24 leaders of the neighborhood programs that you have helped to install. One, you are probably better aware than I am even of the potential of this neighborhood program. But in the few moments that I have, I want to be able to tell you a little bit about what it is that the neighborhood programs have been able to do. Between my front door and your City Hall chambers, neighbors are the practice grounds for civility. Grant us, in using the amended budget form that the Neighborhood Leaders Association has submitted to your committee, the ability to connect with one another through the neighborhoods in a way that we can help one another to know one another before the nighttime of an emergency. We need to know each other's voices. We need to know each other's abilities. We need to know what we can rely on and what we need. Neighborhood programs provide that if we can just connect with the people. Help us to dissipate the anger and to develop the ideas of the community before they reach City Hall, where we can deal with them on a personal basis. Enable us to celebrate Eugene as a great city. Please restore the funds to the neighborhood program and help us to install the program that we are asking for, which is an amendment to that for another $20,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Joshua Gillick, followed by Jennifer, I believe it's Radke.
Hello. I'd like to echo what they said. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I've sat on the Policy Council and the State Executive Board for a head start, and so I know it's a tough task. I'm here to speak on behalf of the HACSA Sponsors Project that is proposed for the Acorn Park, Oak Patch area. As a father, a husband, and a coach for kids sports, I see this as an opportunity to create more problems for an area that already is poverty-stricken and struggling. Seeing kids that I've coached over the years and the lives that they have to live is already tough enough. And to place something in the area that would create even more of a hardship or an opportunity for something in their life to be even more grief-stricken, I think is a very sad thing. I understand that people do deserve second chances and that we all have a way that needs to happen for us when we make mistakes to be able to change. But at the same time, to put this in an area like the other people before me said is around a park, all of our local schools, as well as the gymnastics academy that is right down the road, I think is a poor decision. Whoever proposed that should really reconsider where they're thinking of and what they're trying to allow, because those children do not deserve to have that kind of thing come into their neighborhood. I understand that people need to live somewhere, but in an area where there are so many kids frequenting, I think we need to consider that. I thank you, and I hope that you will truly consider it.
And our final speaker is Jennifer Radke.
Hi, I'm speaking representing the newly reinstated Far West Neighborhood Board, which I would have had no idea about without the newsletter that being mailed out. So I'd like to speak and ask you guys to please reinstate those funds and also the neighborhood matching grants. We have a lot of projects. We're really excited to get started. It's an incredibly diverse area economically and racially. We're really looking for a way to bring people in together. And if you look at the history of grants to neighborhoods, there's been a lot of successes, especially in diverse areas like the Whitaker. We'd like to see some of that happen in our area. I'd also like to oppose that housing project, just on the record. And thank you.
Thank you. All right, and that concludes the public hearing on the FY16 proposed budget. Before we move into discussion, we have a couple of housekeeping things we need to do, such as minutes approval. So in your packet, there are minutes for the May 5th meeting. Hopefully, you've all had a chance to take a look at those. And so I'm asking if there are any recommended changes or comments.
I move to approve the minutes, May 5th meeting.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the May 5th meeting as written. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And please leave your hands up long enough that staff can record it. Okay. All opposed? Same sign? Nay? Any opposed? No? Okay, the motion passes. The minutes are passed. Thank you. Okay, so now we move into our deliberation and action on FY16 budget. Oh, yes.
And Laura, I can probably just mention for the people that came up to talk about the HACSA sponsors project, just to reassure them, there's nothing in this proposed budget that funds anything for that particular project. That if they choose to try to get money from the city or have us support that, it would have to go through a regular RFP process for the distribution of those particular types of monies, which could either be HUD home monies or CDBG kind of funds. So there's nothing within this budget that funds any part of that project.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Question, yes. Councilor Polling.
John, do you know if the county is actually in the process of proposing this or planning this or anything?
I know the county has supported this particular project. I couldn't tell you the details of that, but would be happy to get back in touch with more of those details.
And to the people that testified about the Hacksaw project, I don't know if you've already spoken to the county commissioners, but I would strongly suggest if you haven't, that that's where you start. It sounds like that we're just kind of an additional funding source that the county might come to look at. So I encourage you to take your concerns to the Board of Commissioners at every opportunity you can. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, so we are ready now to either take action if there's proposed. Okay, like I said, action. I love it. Okay, Councilor Brown.
I'm going to make a motion. I copied all of you with the motion that I'm going to make. And I'll discuss it very, very briefly because a lot of people have already said things that I agree with. If I get a second. Okay, here's the motion. I move to A, transfer $55,000 from the reserve account for large property tax appeals to neighborhood services for newsletter outreach and for matching grants. And to B, direct the city manager to restore said reserve account using the marginal beginning working capital and supplemental budget number 1 after the capital transfer and any other prearranged expenditures are accounted for. Second. We've heard a lot of testimony. It's really, I hate to say a trivial amount, but compared to the whole budget of the city, it's really quite small, and yet it does so much good. And the return on this little bit amount of money is, it helps build neighborhoods, it helps build neighborhood cohesiveness, it gets people interested in city government. It makes direct infrastructure, small ones, to the neighborhood parks and tree planting parties, and it's just And it's the only amendment that I know of to mess around with the budget that looks pretty good. So I really urge everyone to vote for this because really the return is price. You can't put a price on what you get back for it, in my view. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Councilor Clark.
Thank you very much. For those that don't know, in my ward, in part of Claire's ward, Santa Clara is a place called Spring Creek, and it runs through both of ours, east to west through there, and is now a beautiful place in the Santa Clara area that was once choked with grass and trash and nasty invasive species kind of waterway that flows through and behind houses and through parks and the neighborhoods in Santa Clara. And with the matching grant program on, I think, at least 2 and maybe 3 occasions, they brought an entire community of people together to clean out a several-mile stretch of that, as I said, through parks and different properties. They got all the vegetation, native species donated and replanted, and it built a community in the process of rebuilding Spring Creek up there, and it's beautiful. I think that sort of thing is exactly what the matching grant program delivers for our community. It delivers more than just stuff and places. It delivers a relationship with the people that live there. And I absolutely support the idea. I think it also is important for us until everybody, including my friend George, is conversing via email all the time and no longer on paper. Why, I think we owe it to folks to make sure that the newsletters are getting out in a method that they can be connected. So I'm happy to support that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, a question, a couple comments. Question is, what's the impact of the funding mechanism on the overall budget and operations in the meanwhile between now and supplemental budget number 1?
You probably better address at least the financing piece.
So, can you hear me? So, between now and supplemental budget number 1 is what, a little over 6 months, and we don't know exactly when this property tax appeal reserve was largely set up because of a Comcast appeal, which hasn't yet been settled, and so we don't know when that will be settled or exactly what the impact will be. So, what's the impact? I don't think it's a significant impact because it's the direction is to restore that in a few months. So
the net impact is really no. Since it's being restored, there's no impact to the property tax appeal, and the tax appeal might not occur for quite a long time, if at all. Yeah. Okay.
presumably sometime.
One of the persuasive arguments for this, other than support for neighborhoods, is that the paper newsletter actually electronic versions of that through email and other places doesn't replace the paper version of it. We've heard numerous times people coming to us and sending us emails about the number of people that get emails and the number of people who get the paper newsletter is dwarfed. It's 10 to 1 sometimes or more. So if we're trying to get that information out, that's a significant way to do it. It's a much more equitable way to do it. A lot of people can't afford to be electronically be able to have email accounts or access to computers. And then not every neighborhood has the wherewithal or the volunteer effort to do what the Fairmont neighbors recently did, which was they ended up selling advertising in their newsletter from local businesses to help pay for the full breadth of our newsletter. And I kind of applaud them for doing that and taking the extra effort to do that. On the other hand, I think it's a shame that we have to spend our time doing that instead of doing neighborhood things, and I'm sure there are other neighborhoods that aren't going to be able to do that. But that's a great newsletter, and it actually has a lot of good information. So I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Jill.
So one of the pleasures of serving on the Budget Committee thus far has been the opportunity to hear about all the hard work that people do in our community. And quite frankly, this tonight and the last week, when we heard from members of the neighborhood associations and saw the list that they brought of all the things that they have done, I mean, it's staggering. I mean, people thank us for our service, but I think we should thank them for all their service. I, of course, would be wholeheartedly in favor of supporting the neighborhood associations. My concern, however, is in reviewing what the city manager put together May 4th, that it refreshed my memory of the reason that we reduced the budget last year is because it was based on the expense history. And my concern is with all of the library, the community services that we have cut, if we're going to be adding back money using our reserve fund to do it, my feeling is it should be done pro rata to all the organizations that we cut, rather than just restating $55,000 that, quite frankly, we don't have, and without using from the reserve fund. So my feeling is that I support it wholeheartedly, but with what money? And so my recommendation, I will oppose the motion. Not that I don't, in my heart of hearts, support it, but I will oppose the motion only because I support a stable budget, and I would like to keep what we have as our future in mind, which, in my mind, with the PERS ruling that came down, is dark. And so, again, I wish we could support it, but I would recommend that we don't support it, and rather we support a stable budget with our future in mind.
Okay, thank you. Josh.
Thank you. I have to admit I'm conflicted about this, but I think I land ultimately where Jill is. I agree with Councilor Brown and others that this appears to be very high leverage, and it's a small amount of money, and it complements volunteer time and a number of other things. And who doesn't support neighborhoods, right? Mom, apple pie, neighborhoods. Also, no one's going to oppose that. But it feels, and this may in part be my newness on the Budget Committee, but this feels largely out of context. All we know about our immediate future is that we, even before the PERS ruling, had insufficient reserves, well below target reserves, several years out, and that PERS ruling would push us into deficit, and that's really, we only know that qualitatively. I'll say more about unfunded costs in a bit when we have some more discussion about this. Finally, I don't know exactly how one would pursue this, but I would like to, if there's a way to attach some sort of provision that if this does get restored, that we as a Budget Committee will use this mechanism to communicate with neighborhoods about our budget priorities and budget challenges in the coming years, because we will clearly need some creativity in outreach and a much broader public discussion about what we're going to do. And I say this with the multi-year financial plan in mind. So that's the one sort of provision I would throw out there.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. Obviously this is one of the ones that has pros and cons to it. Part of the pro and con consideration is this is a one-time solution to what ideally should be an ongoing issue. We talk a lot about one-time solutions to ongoing issues. I would want to restore this funding so that it would be there year after year. You don't only just communicate 1 year. So that would mean next year's budget, we would need to build into it the expectation that we would have this same $55,000 restored in some way in the future budget. And by approving this, I think we would be telegraphing that intention. So the decision to approve it this year would, I think, also be sending a signal that we want to include this, just as we did last year when we talked about libraries and figuring out ways to try to get there. Yes, we do want to make sure we spend ongoing money to fund ongoing things. That's our basic fundamental kind of mandate that we work towards. And so I agree absolutely with that. But we have always jiggled with that a little bit when we felt it was in the community's best interest. And I've always struggled when I want to do it and when I'm uncomfortable doing it. In this case, unlike, say, a back office function, the newsletters and the communication and the services in the neighborhoods really is on the ground kind of stuff. And so it's like libraries. You really are more inclined to want to be supportive of it because it's something that immediately has an impact on people in neighborhoods, and you can see a payoff right there. The matching funds, for example, I can think of 3, right off the top of my head, projects in my area that were funded through matching grants in part. 2 of them in the Acorn Park that folks were talking about. A sidewalk project and a bridge project across a big gully into that park. And the other one was some improvements to that crosswalk on Bailey Hill Road near where that child was run over. So there are some worthwhile things that get funded through those matching projects. So in this case, I would, my issue would be, do I want to support this knowing we're going to need to find that money ongoing? But just because of the fact that it does have such an impact in the neighborhoods and can be used for a lot of good purposes, I would probably go ahead and support it, but I'll support it knowing that we're going to need to try to find that money in coming years. I'm not going to look at this as just do this now, everybody feels good, we all go home, and then we have the same problem next year. We'll have to figure out where that money is going to come from.
Thank you. I put myself in the queue next. I will be supporting this motion. I am a board member for the South University Neighborhood Association and have also seen how challenging it can be to communicate in these new ways. As much as we would like to say that we can reach out to everyone through email or Facebook, it takes people's time and effort, and there's still a lot of people that you don't reach. I hope we'll continue to work with neighborhoods on that. I've certainly seen my neighborhood kind of start to come to terms with how to use these new methods and what can we do with social media. And so that's also the new reality for a lot of people, especially younger people. And so I hope that whatever we do with this, we will continue to help neighborhoods use those new methods. That said, I think we absolutely need to be able to continue to support the paper-based newsletters that are currently the best way to get information out, and have also seen really powerful uses of those matching grants in neighborhoods across the city. To Jill's point, because I do understand this issue of, well, what about this compared to libraries and parks and all these things that we had to cut last year, my hope continues to be that after we learn more about PERS and have a chance to kind of recalibrate where we're going to be, that we're going to have a conversation next year that is about continuing to build towards that sustainable future and looks at those programs in the long-term, multi-year fashion that we really need to look at them in, so that we're building the libraries and the park system that we need for this community going forward. So I will be supporting the motion. And next is Bob.
Thank you, Laura. First off, I want to thank those who came tonight and testified. We appreciate hearing from you, and your input. It is invaluable. After meeting with the city attorney last week after our meeting, I am going to announce that I have a conflict of interest on this motion, and as such, I am going to be withdrawing from the conversation and censoring myself, as hard as that might be. And I would like the record to reflect that if there is a vote, I voted in abstention.
Thank you very much. Councilor Polling.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just like to echo some of the points that Jill made. And with our last meeting, I suggested everybody reread the memo that was sent out in reference to the neighborhood services budget, that in a 4-year period, unspent funds was anywhere between $0 and $46,000. And the reduction was based on actual expense history, so it wasn't something that was just willy-nilly done. The city staff is currently working and continue to working with the Neighborhood Leaders Council over the next several months to evaluate the current method of allocating funds to neighborhood associations to ensure equitable and relevant distributions. I can't support this because we have worked so hard as an entire organization to get to a stable budget. The PERS conversation that Laura is referring to that we're going to be taking on next year is maybe that's when we're going to have the conversation, but we need to start planning for the inevitable now. And I think that with that and also the possibility, we don't know if it's going to happen or not, of the property tax appeals, I think it's best that we move forward with the budget as proposed. And and not add back. And trust me, in my ward, I know of projects that the matching grants has done wonders. Unfortunately, we're in a financial, fiscal situation where we have to take a look at what we're doing and make some tough decisions. And unfortunately, based on the spending history, actual expense history of this program, those cuts were made after thorough research into it. So I can't support the amendment.
Thank you. Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything because I thought it was so obvious that everyone would be for this, but apparently that's not true. I think we definitely want citizens to be involved with government, to be informed about government, to be interested in government, and I think the neighborhood organizations are a good vehicle for that, to get people involved. I think that it's a very important service, the newsletters. I don't, even when everyone has computers, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but even then, I think there's a value to the paper newsletter, which people can set aside till they have time to read it, and then refer to it when they think there's a meeting coming up or something. So I think it's really valuable and is well worth the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Will.
Well, I'm with Betty on this one. I see the neighborhood matching grants and the newsletter as an investment in our future of our city that probably more than pays back 55 grand in property taxes. And that, this seems, it's almost, to me, it's almost like mind-boggling that we wouldn't do this. But we've got, Envision Eugene, we've got a lot of planning for the next 20 years, and all these new bodies that are going to move to Eugene. And these new people don't know about our neighborhoods, don't know about, they're not on any newsletters, they don't have, we don't have their email addresses. The only way we're going to reach these people is by a piece of mail in their mailbox. There's been some discussion about unspent funds, or that some neighborhoods don't do as good a job at mailing out newsletters as other ones. I've lived in neighborhoods that have done a good job, and I've lived in neighborhoods that haven't. I've lived in 3 different neighborhoods in the last 10 years here in Eugene, and I would say, I would not want to hold back the neighborhoods that do a good job just because there are a couple that need some help. So let's allow the neighborhoods that want to communicate, and work to get more neighborhoods on board. But I think all told, it's an easy decision for me in the scope of the in the scope of the millions of dollars in the city budget, 55 grand. Let's get it done.
Thank you. Chelsea.
Thanks. I will be supporting the motion. I really appreciate, Councilor Brown, that you found a source for those monies. History has shown that typically there is money in supplemental budget that will cover these additions to the budget. There are many things that it could go for, as Jill said, but I think this program has shown to be have a very good return on investment. I think it's very important to fund. And in terms of the budget being cut in prior years to match actual spending, very true, but I think it's important that we have access to funds so that we can equitably serve all neighborhoods who want to participate. And if we cut those funds, then that's not going to be so. If we don't reach all neighborhoods, as we have not in past years, then the money goes back into the general fund as I understand it. Is that correct? Or will it be distributed throughout all the neighborhoods who are participating? Do we know?
If there's any money left over at the end of the year, it does fall back into the general fund reserve, which can then be reappropriated.
Okay.
So that would be with any.
So that's why I'm comfortable supporting the motion. As far as Josh's comment about having budget committee communications in the newsletters, in my experience, if you provide information to neighborhoods, they're usually more than happy to distribute that. So if that's a priority, then I would encourage budget committee members to be in contact with their neighborhood associations and with other neighborhood associations to provide those materials. One question I had about the motion is the wording for newsletter outreach. I just want to make sure that that means for the communications fund for neighborhoods, and it's not targeting something else more specific. Is that true?
Well, it's for the printed material, for the mailing costs for the newsletters.
Okay.
And any costs associated with the newsletters, the printing.
Specifically for printing. Okay.
Printing and mailing.
Mostly mailing, that's the biggest expense, but they would include printing.
Okay. Well, from my perspective, serving on my neighborhood board, we have mailings for sure for communication, but it's nice that the communication fund is a little bit flexible because it allows us to try new ways of communicating, whether that's door hangers, whether that's Facebook, whether that's anything we can think of. It drives innovation. So I don't know if this is the correct place to address that, but I would advocate for something that's a little more broad to encourage neighborhoods to think outside the box of how they can best communicate with their neighbors. I think we have to send out a certain amount of mailings each year to reach active status, and that's happening for active neighborhoods. But I think that communications in general is more beneficial. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. You, Ken.
Me. I'm going to vote in favor of this. Last time I spoke about caution with this budget, I think we have been pretty cautious. My sense is that we're not looking to add back very much at all. I've listened to quite a bit of discussion about this. I read the material that we were handed last time, and I've been reading the emails. And I guess I'm finding it pretty compelling in terms of what I hear from the neighborhood groups in terms of how they want to communicate and how they need to communicate using the paper as opposed to the electronic. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. I guess I still, I'm kind of assuming this is a 1 year based on what we've talked about so far. We'll talk about this some more in the future, about where the funds will come from. I guess I'm kind of thinking as we move on from 2015, I think there's a lot going on in the world of electronic communication, and I think it would be nice if we could continue to try to move away from the paper and be a bit more sustainable about it. But I am, I guess at the end of the day, going to come off the fence and vote in support of this.
Thank you. Councilor Evans.
You know, I'm one of those people who hate to make promises that we can't keep. And for me, this feels like one of those kinds of situations because we really don't know what the crystal ball is going to look like for FY17 and beyond. And with this PERS ruling, that may or may not throw us into a situation where we come back for the next budget discussion talking about putting this expenditure back on the table to be cut. On the other hand, I know that in my ward there are a lot of people who either don't have access at home to email, the internet, and they quite often go to, the Bethel Library to make those kinds of connections. It's a social equity issue. And access and communications are critical for social equity. I think our bigger issue with regard to this expenditure as well as other expenditures is not a stable budget for right now, but looking at what we have talked about earlier in terms of a sustainable budget, which means we need to look at it on the long haul. I'm going to swallow hard and vote for Councilor Brown's motion, but with the caveat of saying that we may come back to the table next year and have to look at this being one of the cuts that we may have to make. And I hate to be putting neighborhoods in positions of expectations of having continuing funding over a long period of time when that may not be the case. So my vote will be with the caveat that this could be up for grabs in FY17 as well as other crucial city services. But I think it is important for people who are underserved, and there are a lot of people in this community that are underserved, to have critical communications in their neighborhoods and from the city. So in that vein, I'm going to support the motion, but with some serious reservations.
Thank you. Councilor Surratt.
Thank you. I will support the motion, and I appreciate the conversation and the debate. I think it is a challenge. This is exactly an example of discretionary funding that, frankly, is easy to cut when we're facing budget shortfalls, and we're not going to cut fire and police. These are the kinds of services and enhancements to our community that get the axe. But the ripple effect is large, and what we lose as a community is real. And I think we've heard that from folks who are in support of the motion and from the public comment. I definitely have items in the budget that I would like to see funded this year. But I'm willing to support the city manager's budget for the most part because he has presented us with a fiscally responsible budget. But I will support this item as a one-time item. I expect the staff and neighborhood leaders will continue the work that was mentioned that they've started to make sure the money is allocated strategically and equitably. And I absolutely agree that we cannot replace mailed information with electronic communications. That leaves far too many people out of the conversation and is not a best practice if we're seeking to operate in a social equity framework. So I appreciate the motion. I agree that we cannot guarantee that this funding will continue into the future, that it's a one-time item this year, but I think we can afford, with the motion that Councilor Brown has put forward, to make this change, and so I will support the motion.
Thank you.
I'll support the motion. I hope we do take a bigger look at how we communicate with city residents. People should receive communications in the medium that they choose to receive them. I don't think it's particularly difficult these days to set up an opt-in, opt-out system where you say, gee, I'd really like to get things electronically, and you can stop sending me all these postcards. Unless there's some requirement to do that, then we do that. And I realize sometimes there is. Sometimes there's drivers like the stormwater news. I think it's a permit requirement. However, maybe next time we apply for the permit, we say, hey, we have all these people who have opted into electronic communications. Can we send it out that way? But if we develop that overall, then we could have a system where we mail people who want to be mailed, we email people who want to be emailed, and people were communicated with in the way they choose to be communicated with. So I hope we'll look at that as a way of saving money, because I really do hate spending money on the postal service, for postcards that people throw away. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, if there's no other discussion, we have the motion on the table, so we are ready to vote. So, motion is here. If there are no other questions, do you have any final words that you want to say, Councilor Brown?
No, I don't.
Okay. So, all those in favor of the motion as written here, vote aye with hands up. Okay, thank you. All those opposed? Nay? Okay, and the motion carries. And one abstention, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. And the motion carries. Thank you. So now we need a motion to, unless there are not other motions, to approve the, sorry, Will, do you have a question or another motion?
I just had there was a piece of feedback that came in regarding the wastewater fund city hall nexus, and I was kind of curious if there was somebody more informed than I am about that whole bit. The concerning piece that was brought up in the email, which I have no idea for the factual basis or not, was is this going to get challenged in court, or is this, and I have no idea, where this is on the reality scale or whatnot, but I feel like before we approve the budget, I feel like we should address it, because it was something that I had totally not on my radar until somebody brought it up. So.
And a few other people have also indicated that they would like a little bit of clarification around that, so if that's...
No, we have Kurt here that he can address that.
Okay, so I probably shouldn't presuppose that everyone watching understands what the question or the comments were beyond what Will said. So to paraphrase, the input you received was from Peter Ruffier expressing concern with using stormwater and wastewater utility funds to offset a portion of the cost of City Hall. I should say before I answer, for those of you who might not be aware who Peter is, besides being a friend of mine, he was the wastewater division director for Eugene Public Works for a number of years, a dozen years or so, until leaving about 5 years ago and finished his career up at Clean Water Services. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, if you're, Will, if you're wondering about the credibility of the comments, I think Peter is certainly at least national, if not international, authority on wastewater issues and a national expert on NPDES matters, et cetera. So that said, I regularly rely upon his opinion myself. So I think where we differ on the testimony that he submitted is probably in a few ways. And to give you the context of the City Hall conversation that has been going on in Eugene for many years, to be fair, let's say 15 plus years, the City Hall conversation has been going, and a lot of decision points have come to the council over that period of time. And last fall, the council was presented with, arguably some of the quote final decision points on moving ahead with City Hall from the architectural firm. And there were a few points that needed to be debated and decided upon. One of those was the prospect for underground parking under Phase 1 of City Hall. Ultimately, we did not proceed with that. And one of the other decision points was around whether or not we take advantage of this point in time and the prospective discount to be received from adding a fourth floor to what had been conceived as a three-story City Hall facility. The budget for City Hall is and has been more or less fixed. Not a lot of opportunities for adding funding to do that. However, we wanted to look at some possibilities for what it would take to add the fourth floor while we had the contractor on site. And I think some of the numbers that were presented at the October work session indicated that the fourth floor could be added to the project and add nearly 40% additional floor space for something less than 20% additional construction costs. So we set about the business of finding a way to see if we could do that. Public Works dedicated funds were brought forward as a proposal to the City Council to accomplish in the fourth floor. And it's not necessarily a new concept. Public Works leases space in downtown Eugene today, including the third and fourth floors of the Wells Fargo building and the space where Public Works admin occupies in the Park Blocks building, Park Place building. So this simply represented an opportunity to buy ahead, essentially purchase space in the City Hall project that would eventually, at a point in time, become space that would take the place of what we're presently leasing. In terms of numbers and some of the conversation at the work session, the proposal was $135,000 per year from each of four dedicated Public Works funds over a period of 5 years that are viewed, I think, as John has indicated, as one-time expenditures. It's taking money from the savings account from those funds to put in place one-time capital construction funding, albeit over a period of 5 years, to prepay for roughly 9,500 square feet or whatever the fourth floor amounts to upon completion in the City Hall facility. As to who specifically would occupy that fourth floor at some point. That decision hasn't been made, and we've tried to be pretty clear over the course of time that the public works funds are being used to buy ahead an amount of space in the City Hall complex, whether Public Works occupies that space or equivalent space in Phase 2 is to be determined, but the philosophy would be the same. In terms of the effect on utility rates, to the extent each of the funds are contributing one-time what amounts to savings account contributions from balance available, the rates are not directly adjusted by virtue of making these contributions over a period of 5 years. It's just that the 2-month operating reserve would be at least that much below the desirable level in each of those. So I think at that I might see if there are questions we could help fill in the blanks, but that in essence is how I would respond to Peter's submittal.
Councilor Brown is the first one.
Thanks for the explanation. Maybe you could just tell us what the 4 funds are. The 135.
Sure.
Taken from each year.
Sure. Stormwater, wastewater, road fund, and our our professional services fund, which are the primary sources for paying for leased space for the downtown public works operations today.
So we're currently using money for those funds to pay for building, leasing space, operations, that kind of thing.
Josh, did you have a question?
That was super helpful. Thank you. I'm curious. It seems like, I mean, in the spirit of what you kind of foreshadowed this, it seems like we should almost be able to know that we're getting a better deal, right? We're sort of buying this down. Presumably, it would come back to those funds as free rent in the future or something. I'm trying to figure out whether there's some mechanism of transparency here, so there's some sort of square up. Because I understand what you said about rates. We have the room in it, but the real answer to that in the long term would be that we've improved the cost structure of wastewater and stormwater and so on because we're going to own rather than rent. Right?
That would be the ultimate objective. So as to not overpromise on this particular issue, I should mention that the City Council debated this particular point at some length, and ultimately were not unanimous in their opinion on it. But I think it just needs to be pointed out that 9,500 square feet is a portion of the space ultimately that in the broader vision of how downtown municipal government would work would be a portion of what Public Works would ultimately need. So as we square up space and cost through subsequent phases, there would be additional conversation on how that's most appropriately allocated.
Other questions for Kurt about this before we move on? Thank you very much.
Yep.
That's very helpful. I appreciate it. Okay, so again, Councilor Brown's motion has passed. I have a couple people who have indicated, Councilor Taylor and Councilor Surratt, that they would like to make some additional comments, I believe, on the budget overall before we move forward, and Councilor Brown as well. So, okay, Councilor Taylor, we'll start with you.
I move to approve the budget as amended.
Second.
Okay. There has been a motion to approve the budget as amended and seconded. Okay, so we now move into the discussion on this subject. Yeah. So I believe we have, yes, Councilor Surratt, you're first.
That'll work for me. So I do not have a motion, but since this is my first meeting to be present in person, I thought I would make some of my comments in person to the committee and speak to one thing in particular that I have particular interest in, and John's moved away from the table. City manager?
Do this and still make the official motion.
I had a question for you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just when I needed you. I just wanted you to speak briefly to the Human Services Commission funding that you've put in as one time and remind us of how much that amount was.
$250,000.
And what do you know what our overall contribution to the Human Services Commission is? I think it's...
We're trying to talk about the motion.
Okay. Just our overall HSC contribution.
610.
Ken believes it's something the panel.
610 plus 250 this
Plus the
year.
250.
610 is the base, right?
Find out.
I'm Lori Kievit with the Planning and Development Department, and we give in several different ways, but the general contribution is $860,000. There's several public safety contributions like CAHOOTS and several other line items, but I think the one you're asking about is $860,000.
In terms of our general fund contribution. And so this year we've got $250,000 that the city manager has put back in as one-time funding. So, as I look at this budget, I was looking for a way to characterize it, and I really see it as it's a treading water budget. We're treading water this year. We're not drowning. We're not climbing out of the boat. We're kind of stable and treading water. And as I mentioned when I was on the phone at the last meeting, before last, we still have significantly reduced hours at our libraries, particularly our branch libraries. We've got parks and recreation maintenance that's inadequate to what our community expects from our parks and recreation facilities. And we're very limited in our ability to be responsive to a number of issues around the community, homelessness in particular. So while I am not going to propose that we shift that HSC funding back to the base contribution as ongoing this year, I will be looking to next year's budget, assuming it remains stable, assuming things continue in a positive direction, and I know there's a lot of questions out there about that, but assuming those things, I would be next year asking this committee to designate that funding as ongoing if the city manager has not chosen to do that himself. I think there's a real imperative for us to be supporting our human services network with an ongoing commitment that can be relied upon as much as possible in our budget cycles, and not to continue to threaten it with funding by designating it as one time. So I just wanted to speak to that with all of you in person. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilor Brown.
I have a question regarding the Urban Renewal Agency portion of the budget, and it's on page 110, and it's I noticed that this appears new, the Riverfront Program Revenue Fund. I see it only appears in the budget and the proposed FY16 budget. There's no history prior to that. And I'm wondering, I just have a couple questions about it.
Okay.
I'm wondering, what is the benefit of creating a new revenue fund? What is its purpose?
So we did create this fund first time this year, and the dollars that are put in that fund are the dollars that represent money that was not derived from property taxes. As you know, urban renewal has significant restrictions on how you can spend property tax dollars, and the spending of the non-property tax dollars, we can use those dollars for loans, for instance. And tomorrow at the City Council meeting, you'll have a presentation, and that's really the purpose of setting up this fund to demonstrate what dollars we have that are not property tax revenues, and then have the opportunity to talk about whether you want to set up this loan program or not, and be assured that the funding didn't come from property tax revenues.
I see. Well, yes, I've been reading the material for tomorrow, and the river loan thing looks like preliminary. Judgment looks pretty slick. Looks nice. Looks like it will be a good thing. I'm just wondering, couldn't you do this out of the general fund, though? Couldn't the loan money not come out of the general fund as the Urban Renewal General Fund as
Tax increment.
tax increment funds?
Yeah, I think we wanted to just make it a little bit cleaner and easier to understand, right? So that you, and we did this in the downtown fund. We took all the dollars that were not property tax revenues and put them in a separate fund, just so we could really keep track of them separately. We haven't had a need to do that in Riverfront until now, and so we thought it was time to.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of activity there in the very near
Right.
future. So I see that the revenue is, some of it's miscellaneous, but most of it is interfund transfers. I'm assuming that's from the Urban Renewal General Fund?
Yes.
Okay. And then I see expenditures. This fund was set up almost $3 million, and already $1 million has been spent. And I'd just like to know what that $1 million was spent. I mean, what did it go to?
So nothing's spent yet. This is a proposed budget.
They proposed. I mean, what will it be spent on?
Right, and the $1 million is the loan fund. So that would be appropriating the dollars to start the loan fund.
Okay. All right. And since it's just started, it's hard to know what the administration costs will be, the admin. Do you have any guess what?
For the loan program, the administration for the Riverfront District is included in the general fund, so in Fund 821.
Okay. And so this fund here will have no administration costs?
We won't account for the administration of the loan program in Fund 824. We'll account for all of the Riverfront District administration in Fund 821, including the administration
Urban Renewal General Fund?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Those were my only questions.
Great, thank you. Josh?
We spent an hour talking about $55,000. I realize that we do not discuss every dollar equally, which is good, because if we did, discussing all $144 million would take us 2,618 hours, or 15 weeks and 4 days. Let me sort of compress my comments a little bit inside the 15 weeks and 4 days about the remainder of the budget, really looking ahead. I feel like some of these comments should not just be on the public record in the sense that they're on the website, but maybe give a hook to people listening or watching to go and look at these things. We have $115 million for continuing current services that we don't have money to pay for over the next 5 years, and we have about $250 million for implementing adopted plans and policies, not just aspirations that we may have beyond those, but our existing aspirations, another $250 million there. So just to get a few of them again on the verbal record, they're all available in publicly available budget documents. $21 million over 5 years for emergency medic unit staffing and ambulance transport fund shortfall, with descriptions in the multi-year financial plan about how we're at capacity with these things. $25 million over 5 years for a new fleet maintenance facility at some point in 5 years for that, since the current one isn't seismically safe or in compliance with federal standards. $12 million for parks maintenance. I know we'll have more of that discussion in the coming year. And $57 million over 5 years for pavement preservation, and that isn't even all of the backlog as described in the pavement preservation plan. And, this is not entirely hypothetical, right? I mean, Council had a very good discussion about with LTD yesterday about moving ahead and additional sort of broader community aspirations, including Springfield and the rest of the Lane Transit District. There will be capital expenditures and then O&M funding to match that we'll need to come up with as a community. So I will end by reiterating my eager anticipation of participating in a reinvigorated revenue discussion.
As will I. As will many of us, I hope. Great, thank you. Okay, any other comments before we move to the motion on the table? No? Okay. So Councilor Taylor has moved, and it's been, oh, no? Not.
Well, maybe we can just clarify that Councilor Taylor, she just shorthanded the motion that's up there on the screen. Because that's actually kind of there's some legalese in there that's important
okay, perfect. Let's
ensure.
That's what you meant, right, Betty?
That's what I meant. You want me to read it?
Okay.
That's what she said.
I meant let's go home.
That's what this says, just with a lot of extra words.
Want me to read that?
Okay, so.
You do not need to read it, but as long as we're just all clear that that is the motion that you're
Yes.
proposing, then fine.
Yes, that's it.
Moving the official motion.
Yeah, the official.
Official motion. Okay, so everyone has a minute, has everyone had a chance to read that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So, minor edits to Councilor Brown. Councilor Brown's motion as well, but.
Great. Counselor Taylor, did you want to speak to this at all?
No.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so motion on the table before us is as you see here, legalese and all. So all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and vote aye. Okay.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. And I believe that was unanimous, yes? Was there any nays? Did I miss any? Anyone opposed? Okay, all right, so we... Oh, thank you, yes, an urban renewal. And
I'll move.
Oh, you're moving, okay, I didn't know if you were moving or wanted to be in the queue. Okay, so there is also a motion to approve what's the actual language? Oh, there it is.
I
Okay.
move that the Budget Committee recommend to the Eugene City Council, acting as the Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors, the FY16 budget for the Eugene Urban Renewal Agency that consists of the city manager's FY16 proposed budget, including the property tax levies and/or rates contained therein, amended to reflect appropriations for prior year encumbrances and prior year capital projects.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of this motion? Aye. Okay, all opposed? Hands up, nay? Okay, seeing none, that passes. All right, so with that, we have finished our current work for this budget cycle. However, before we leave tonight, just a reminder that we will be having an optional meeting in the fall to be determined to look at the multi-year financial plan, which will inform some of our ongoing further discussions. So look for more news about that as we have more information. And finally, before we go, 3 of our citizen members' terms expire this June. I'm sorry. 2 of our citizen members. Thank you. Terms expire this June, Bob Clark and Marty Wilde. So Jill Featherson has applied for an additional term, right? And that has been nominated for reappointment, and that all gets determined in June. But Marty and Bob have decided to move on to other projects. And so we want to take a few minutes to recognize their service and time and commitment to the Budget Committee and our process. So I just want to take a few minutes and say thank you.
Lovely parting gifts.
And you get lovely parting gifts.
Home version of parting, not party.
No, not party, sorry, parting. So thank you very much.
Moving on to the Budget Committee.
Thank you.
Good job on the...
Congratulations for your Budget Committee. What's that?
And you got the new one last week.
But you did.
I never received it.
Okay, so I want to thank you again for your service, and I also want to thank everyone who came this evening to speak. From the public, it's always extremely valuable to us to have that feedback and input in the process. And so with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Great.